Say the line!
Rima!
ETChedderas. I was just genuinely curious about how they reached 50,000 subscribers, what they were doing, etc. Accusing her of taking up with people's money, etc. It's a bad idea, etc. Apex spreads, etc. Color the bust, etc. Very, you know, simple, white, etc. 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 Sorry, I only date women who can say etc. Happy rejection day, I guess. Etc. Me etc. etc. and etc. 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 We played together etc. 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 Censor the word staff care etc. etc. I think etc. 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 leads to self-discovery etc. etc. F for long breaks etc. 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 Who etc. It's etc. 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 Give him the green light, etc. 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 Subscriptions, sponsorships, etc. We got the etc. t-shirt. No dead naming, etc. and etc. 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 Shots and softcore porn, etc. 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 She talked you into it, etc. 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 Fanbox, Patreon, Fansly, etc. 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 He has been saying etc. images, etc. 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 Said etc. 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 My catchphrase is it start by sucking, etc. 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 and etc. 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 Doesn't feel confident in etc. 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 Literal laugh, etc. 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 Colorful sketch style, graphic art style, etc. 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 Zen silver, etc. Move on, etc. 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 She didn't get a boyfriend, she's not pregnant, etc. etc. etc.
Knockout!
You guys are the goats! Thank you for keeping me going, you're my motivation. Thanks so much for all the love, the generosity, guys. I love y'all.